We're here today at the site of the base camp for the Reynolds Creek fire. It started up in Glacier National Park, about 6 miles inside the park from the eastern boundary of St. Mary, on the Going to the Sun Highway, a very famous scenic road that's visited by 1 million+ visitors every year. Want to make the drive over there. The fire started last Tuesday afternoon about 3:30. They're not sure of the cause, but it looks more like man-made than a lightning fire, but that's still under study. The Blackfeet tribe became involved early on because in 2006 we lost millions of dollars in timber resource when the fire in 2006 left the park. The park at the time had a let it burn policy to let nature renew itself, but part of nature is the weather, and the winds came up and shifted that fire, which then went off the park property and onto the Blackfeet reservation. And so we lost thousands of acres of our forest lands, and that of course cost us millions of dollars in revenue, lost revenue. So the day the fire started, I called the superintendent of the park, Jeff Mao, to make sure he understood the concerns of the Blackfeet tribe. So we've been very proactive in making sure each incident commander and everybody in charge is well aware that the Blackfeet didn't want this leaving the park. We're obviously first concern is life safety. Secondary to that, of course, is we didn't want the fire to leave the park. We subsequently also contacted the senatorial offices and made sure they were aware of it. They delivered a letter to Secretary Jewell expressing the Blackfeet's concerns. I hope that our influence plus the fire in 2006 drove them to a decision-making process where they transitioned from a Type 3 right up to a Type 1 firefight. And so a lot of the resources available to a Type 1 are obviously at a much higher level than a Type 3. Like I said, they bypassed typically going to Type 2. And so I think they were trying to be somewhat responsive to our needs. Also, the lawsuit on 2006 is still open, so I think they had a heightened awareness and a keen sensitivity to the fire not leaving the park. We've been engaged every day since the fire started. We don't have as many Blackfeet on the fire as we would like. They're actually dispatched out of Kalispell because Kalispell covers all of the park, and so we dispatch first out of Kalispell and other parts of Montana before they ever come to the Blackfeet reservation. But we do have our Chief Mountain hotshots on site. They were actually dispatched to a separate fire in Montana 2 hours before this one started. We have a camp crews, we have 3 pump trucks. So we do have some Blackfeet resources, but it was grudgingly that we got them on there. We had a very good cordial relationship with the incident commander. They've actually had 2. The Type 3 incident commander, a very good relationship with him, and the Type 1 commander right now who's in charge, very good relationship with him. We've had our point man, Robert DeRozier, who's also our Homeland Security, the Tribal Homeland Security and Disaster Emergency Services Director, assigned to this fire right from the get-go. Robert was one of the first ones. He and the BAV Volunteer Fire Department were the first ones that responded to the fire. And Robert's been involved here on site, representing the tribe's interest. I've been up here every day since the fire started. We've had decisions to make. We actually negotiated a contract for them to occupy. This is Chewing Blackbone's campground, a tribal campground, and we agreed to vacate the existing campers. We actually had a youth leadership conference going on up here, and so we moved the youth out and the campers, and we were able to turn this over to them, and they quickly wanted the other half. We gave them this south meadow, but they also have the north parking camping area. And so they've moved this base camp in here right away, and it grew very quickly, very quickly as they moved more and more resources in here. We had 7 helicopters up at the heliport just north of us. I think they've moved that down to 6. So they've got a lot of resources in here to contain the fire. I feel fairly confident now it's contained and it's stopped within the park. Obviously the wind around here is always a major factor. And so we're cautiously optimistic. We had to evacuate the west side of the lower St. Mary Lake and the KOA campground. And so we've lifted that evacuation as of Sunday morning. The tribe was in that decision-making process because that's all tribal land, but we obviously took our advice and our lead from the experts here fighting the fire. The incident commander and his command team have briefed us every day, and so we're able to that. As a matter of fact, he provided a briefing for the tribal council on Friday, and so I appreciate his cooperation and his sensitivity to the needs of the Blackfeet tribe, because we don't want it going beyond the park. We don't want to lose additional natural resources. Our forest lands are running out, so we don't want them burned up. And so we've had a very good working relationship with the command structure. They've opened every door to Robert. They've never denied him any information or sharing of any information. So it's been a good working relationship. Our primary focus was actually threefold. We wanted protection of life, obviously, is first and foremost. Containment of the fire within the park, and then any ancillary Blackfeet jobs. Since this is our neighborhood, we felt it very important that some Blackfeet be given employment opportunities too. And so we've been fighting for that every day, and we have gotten some Blackfeet on the site. So
I believe we can fill a majority of the positions. There's some pretty technical positions that require special training that others have that we don't have yet. So it's a matter of time before we can fill all those positions. But at this time, I believe that with the experience and training that the natives have here on the reservation, that we can fill at least majority of the positions, if not half, over half, if not more.
This is our home. This is our backyard. We want to take care of our home first. Unfortunately, we were dispatched to another fire when this started, but we made it back here. The whole time, that's all we want to do is get back and help out everybody here that is in our own backyard. Definitely.
We're very positive today with the progress, and looks like it'll be out. I'm not sure when they'll open the Going to the Sun road. That has a very big economic impact for all the businesses on this side of the Going to the Sun highway, as there's no customers. They're all trapped on the other side of the mountain. So obviously there's pressure from business owners to reopen that. The actual reopening of the road will be the call of the Park Service and the incident commander. The tribe won't influence that. Obviously our input is safety and protection of life, and then obviously the economic interest. The best case scenario is that we're hoping that the Going to the Sun highway is in fact open. If it's open, we know we're in a safe spot where we can then start clean up, mop up, and then obviously they'll demobilize here, but we're hoping then that we can return things to normal. Our own campground here was actually getting very popular since we've cleaned it up, and even we need to get back to a more normalcy. It's disrupted our tribal government to a certain extent as we deal with issues up here, but I think we'll be returning to normalcy this week. I expect by Friday they may reopen the highway. So once that's reopened, that means everybody's on board that it's safe enough to try to then return to normal. So that's where we're hoping to go. We have some of our Blackfeet law enforcement. The command center here has really been here from day one. And so we want to get our law enforcement back to town and taking care of the rest. The fire started actually about 12 miles from St. Mary up the Going Sun Highway. It wasn't all the way up the mountain, but it was about 12 miles, really where the flats start as you come down off the mountain. So it's 12 miles from here. They always say it was 7 miles from the visitor center at the top of the Going Sun Highway. That reference is a good reference if you're familiar with the park and you know where the visitor center is. We say it's about 12 miles from St. Mary's entrance over here. That's where it started. You know, I think my last report I got was it was 45% contained. I'm guessing it's closer to 60 plus now. We had some rain yesterday, that helped. I actually was able to do a flyover yesterday morning, or Sunday morning I did a flyover. The fire really hasn't grown since Saturday. So they've been able to contain it right around 3,200 acres. So I don't think it has grown at all. So right now it's getting contained because of the rain and the weather. What undoes it is that we get those severe winds in the afternoon. We'll start undoing efforts from the fire now. They still do flyovers every night with an infrared camera, trying to detect hot spots, and then they issue those maps the next morning for crews to work on those areas. Worst case scenario is that the wind picks it back up because it's in a semi-controllable area right now, but it's physically down in that valley, and if the wind picks it up, it can move very quickly. These things can jump 300 yards very easily with embers blowing, especially if you get a 30-mile-an-hour wind. If it comes out of the park, it's going to move along the south side of this lake right over there, which is very fuel-rich with fir trees. Right now it's slowed by a stand of aspen, you know, but if it gets back into the fir, it'll start moving quickly. If it hits that spot, then it has the potential of traveling all the way around the lake and back up Mini Glacier Valley, which is also very fuel-rich, and it's going to be very difficult to stop it if it gets into that field, because it's you can look over there, it's thick with timber, close knit. There's been no fuel reduction efforts in the several years, and so that was part of our complaint on the Red Eagle fire, is not so much their suppression efforts, but their lack of fuel reduction made that area rich for fire. We have the same scenario on the other side of the lake, and if it comes out of the park, that's the only place it can go. That's the worst case. Getting out of the park. No, it's just that we're fully engaged and very concerned about our homeland. We've been down this road before, and we don't want to go there again. You know, and so we've been working with the federal government, not so much the state, but the federal government. It is in the park, but our reservation stands right next to it. So we're going to remain engaged until we know this is a safe environment, so we can